Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hello again, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to the Conscious Love Show podcast. Shane Kohler on with you today. As always, it's a pleasure to be here and look forward to diving back in with you. And today I want to have a little bit of maybe a difficult conversation. And I've hit record like 3 or 4 times now, just trying to find the words to start this. And I guess the best thing to do is just to go for it. So forgive me if it's not perfect, but I'm speaking from the heart today. And I'm coming to you with some heartbreak and some anger and some sadness and some frustration. Because I look at what's happening in the world on the macro level and also on the micro level. And I think the macro affects the micro. And this is a crazy time to be alive. You know, crazy events we're living through, especially if you're in the US, but really I think most of the world is affected by it at this point. The current administration we have and the war in Iran. And I mean, there's so much. And I try to stay away from global issues here because you know, my goal today is not to throw you into a state of fear and outrage and helplessness. I don't think that's useful. I think, you know, if for you to come on here and have your nervous system be dysregulated is the opposite of what I'm trying to do, right? So I want to stick to what we have power over. And my goal here is always to be truly helpful. So I want this episode to give you access to something in your life. And at the same time, if you're anything like me, you're looking around at, you know, and not just what's happening in politics or the war on Iran or all of these things, but there was a story that came out this week claiming 25 million men are involved in a rape academy where these men were in a group online teaching each other how to drug and rape their wives or their partners. And that's terrifying. I mean, 25 million men, that's fucking terrifying. And let me say, off the bat, like it wasn't 25 million men. And that's something I want to address today. But when we look at all of these issues and, you know, the Epstein files or the rape academy, or even like a lot of the political issues, what I find so often is what it boils down to on the personal level is a war happening between men and women. And it's so interesting how every single one of these issues ignites a new battle between men and women. And it makes you wonder, is there someone out there who has an interest in making men and women hate each other? And let me start by saying I'm not really a conspiracy theorist. I mean, recent events are making me question that. But generally speaking, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm someone who has been pretty grounded in saying there's probably a more reasonable explanation to most things than to assume there's some kind of global conspiracy, someone pulling the puppet strings behind the scenes. And generally, I tend to think that. I think most problems can be boiled down to unhealed wounds on the collective level, to greed, to hunger, to extreme levels of narcissism and Machiavellianism and psychopathy, right? Like I think like most issues can be explained with very rational explanations. It doesn't require necessarily a global conspiracy. And yet, people who have influence over millions and billions of people, like people who have the ability to pull the strings in the world, they learn certain skills when they pull those strings. And one of the skills that the people who pull the strings in the world have learned, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is just reality, by the way, because there are individual people who have generational wealth and generational power, and they've been passing this wealth and this power down in a lineage for generations. I mean, maybe going back 5-6 generations, some of them. And these people and these families have learned a few things about how to keep their power and how to keep other people from getting it. And again, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just reality. And one of the things that these people have learned is that if you can keep masses of people fighting with each other, they never look at you. And I say this with a lot of love for humanity. We're all so stupid, we fall for it over and over and over and over again. And I shouldn't even say we're stupid. I should say we're afraid. We're chronically dysregulated. And when someone can point to an enemy and say, there they are, they're the cause of your problems, it gives us a sense of power and agency and safety, even if it's false. And so if they tell the men, women are your problem, they tell the women, men are your problem, and they can identify a common enemy and we can align together against that enemy. And this is what you see with, there's a huge culture of man hatred, and women bond together with their mutual hatred of men. And the manosphere is the man version of that, with recently a big documentary that came out about the manosphere. And it's men bond together in their hatred or their fear of women. And if certain people or certain institutions can generate the narratives that create a common enemy and have people unify against that enemy, it keeps millions and billions of people in chronic states of disempowerment. And let's look at something for a moment. There are people in the world who go hungry every single day. People in the world who don't have enough food to eat. And yet restaurants and other organizations, like we throw out enough food to feed all the hungry people in the world and still have more, right? Like we could give our garbage away and it would feed all the hungry people in the world, and there would still be more left over after that. And yet it goes in the garbage and people go hungry. Like, how do you explain that kind of madness? It's because there's a system that has been orchestrated such that it keeps people in chronic states of fear and scarcity. Because when people are afraid, when people are dysregulated, when people feel unstable in their life and in their world, they're easy to control, they're easy to manipulate, and they don't get a hold of their inherent power. And you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to name that there are people and institutions who largely benefit from keeping people in these states. And the gender wars is one of the oldest and most reliable ways to do that. If you look at how Trump won the recent presidency, and I don't mean to get into a political conversation here, but I'm pointing out how this works. One of the biggest campaigns he ran on was anti-immigration. And now he's turned ICE, the immigration officials, into a personal army to do whatever he wants with. That's a separate issue. But one of the core issues he ran on was anti-immigration. And he did exactly what I'm talking about here. He created a common enemy. These immigrants who are coming across the border, they're stealing your jobs, they're raping your daughters, they're ruining our culture, they're ruining our country. And like, look, I mean, I used to do construction. That's what I did for years. My father was in construction, and then I got into it until I later became a trainer and a coach. But I worked in construction. I worked next to immigrants every day of my life. And I mean, I've known thousands of immigrants, many of them not legal. And my experience of them across the board has been that they are humble, kind, hardworking people who are just trying to have a better life for themselves and their families. Now, are there exceptions? Are there immigrants who are rapists and murderers? Sure. Are there native people to the U.S. that are rapists and murderers? Yeah. And if you look at the numbers, probably more natives than immigrants. So the whole idea of these immigrants being a problem and they're ruining our country and all, like, it's a complete narrative. It's a complete lie. But there were large numbers of people in the country who felt disenfranchised by the system, who felt like they didn't have a place, they didn't belong, they couldn't make their way, they weren't successful, they were always second to someone else. And what the president did was he said, they're the ones who caused your problem. And if you support me, I'll fix the problem by getting rid of all of them. And now he was elected. He's doing an okay job of getting rid of all of them, I suppose. He's deporting and detaining a lot of people, but the problems haven't gotten any better. They've gotten worse. And again, I don't want to get into a political conversation, but I'm pointing out the power of creating an enemy. And that's a really obvious example that all of us in the U.S. are witnessing in real time right now. He was able to take over one of the largest countries in the world largely by creating an enemy and aligning people against that enemy. And the same thing is happening with men and women. And I think this issue with men and women goes back way, way further, maybe since the beginning of time. I don't know. But it's potent and it's powerful and it's real. And at some point, on an individual level, we have to stand up and choose to stop hating the other. We have to stand up and choose to love each other. Incompletely, imperfectly, with all of our flaws and all of our hang-ups and all of our challenges, and we have to choose to love each other anyway. And like, I want to call this out right now, because if you're a man who hates women, or if you're a woman who hate men, like, I want to tell you, that requires no intelligence. It requires no critical thinking. It requires no personal responsibility. You get to be a victim, so you have no personal responsibility over your life, your choices, what you've created for yourself. You don't have to be intelligent or critically thinking. You don't have to look at the facts or the reality of the situation. You can simply blame half of the human population for your problems, absolve yourself of all responsibility, and feel like a good person, feel like you're in the right. And when you do that, like, you're being manipulated. And like let's look at one of the most obvious places this is happening. It's happening on social media. And the algorithms, it's funny, like Meta, a parent company of Facebook and Instagram, just had a class action lawsuit filed against them. Had to pay out $325 million or something like that, which is nothing. I mean, it's fucking peanuts to these people. But this lawsuit was brought for this reason, because the algorithms are brutal. They have no consciousness of people's mental health. They have no consciousness of what's going to serve people or empower them or be truly helpful to them. The algorithms are designed for one thing only: to keep you on the platform. And from a business perspective, that makes sense, right? If I have 100,000 more hours of people on my platform, I can show that to investors. I can show that to advertisers. I can say, look, last month we had X amount of numbers of hours on the platform. This month we've increased that by X amount. That makes people want to advertise on your platform. That makes people want to invest, right? So there's a lot of incentive for them to keep people on the platforms. And they have maximized the algorithm using basically slot machine psychology, right? Like the same psychology that a casino uses to keep you on the slot machine, putting another quarter in. That's the same type of technology that the algorithms use on social media to keep you on the platform, swiping one more time, one more video. And what is it that's going to keep someone on the platform? If I can activate your nervous system, if I can make you feel like you are under threat, if I can make you feel like you are under attack, you're going to stay for one more video. And there's this psychological loop that happens where it's like, I get on there, I get triggered, I feel like I'm under attack, and I keep thinking that the next video is going to offer me some relief. And this is affecting the dopamine system in the brain. And there's a great book, by the way, if anybody's interested. There's a book called Dopamine Nation. It was written by a Harvard professor who studies psychology of the brain. And she really mapped out beautifully and in exquisite detail how the dopamine system in our brain works and how this system is manipulated by things like social media. Slot machines are the same thing. You keep thinking that next quarter is going to be your win. And you keep putting one more quarter in, waiting for that win. And crazy thing is like the machine is designed to make sure that you spend more money there than you win. Right? So like if you play for any considerable amount of time, you will always spend more money than you get back, but you win often enough to keep you on the edge of your seat. Like, oh, am I going to win this time? And social media does the same thing. Social media keeps you in your seat, scrolling for one more hit, one more activation of dopamine in your brain, keeping your nervous system in a state of feeling like you're under threat and believing that the next video or the next thing you read is going to be the solution. And it's not difficult to see what a huge toll this has taken on our mental health, our attention spans, our ability to focus, our ability to feel safe inside of our own bodies, inside of our own lives, inside of the world we live in. And something I want to say here is like the issues between men and women, or even the political issues, like none of this is new. None of this is new. These are the same battles that have been fought for eons, the same arguments that have been had forever. But they've never been in our back pockets before. And this is where it becomes a real problem, because before, like I remember when I was younger, like I would get up, I would go to school, I'd go through my whole day, and maybe the news would be on at home and it would be on for an hour at night and we would get the news stories. Now we're getting news stories every time we open our phones. And it's not just news stories. It's every inflammatory idea that goes viral. and outrage goes viral. There are a lot of creators on social media that have built their entire platform around creating outrage. And it makes me sick. It really does. It makes me sick. And I'm going to talk about some of these people today. They've built their entire platform around outrage, and basically their whole business model is I'm going to keep you in a chronic state of fear, hatred, dysregulation. And if I can keep you in that state, I'm going to profit off of it. And these influencers are doing the legwork for the big companies like Meta, who are raking in billions off of the backs of these people who are intentionally keeping you in a state of outrage. And what I was saying is none of this is new. These are the same arguments. These are the same wars that have been fought all throughout history, all throughout time. But now they're being spoon-fed to us in 30-second bits every time we open our phones. We used to have to turn on the news and watch it. We used to have to go online and look for articles and read them. Now they're being brought to us. And it's sick and it's twisted. And so the same issues that might have been fringe or might have been niche before are becoming mainstream. And there are relatively small niche worldviews that in reality a very small percentage of people buy into, that are being blown way out of proportion because they're so outrageous. The manosphere is a good example of this. So, and many of you have probably seen by now the Louis Theroux documentary on the manosphere. And I mean, these guys are fucking sick. They're just, I mean, they must have like some severe mommy issues, or I mean, there are probably many reasons why somebody would turn out like this. But like these guys are just sick, and they're not a representation of men. But if you go on social media, you'll think they are. And there's something really interesting, like Andrew Tate is a big one. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Andrew Tate. He's this sick, twisted individual who, he was an MMA fighter, and I'd say he was kind of the originator of this whole manosphere thing. And then a lot of other men followed him and you know, like mimicked his brand. But it was just like super misogynist. Like you basically treat women like you treat women like property. It was like being a man is all about being rich and powerful and being strong. And so, he's all about like big muscles, fast cars, lots of money, flaunting his wealth, having a flock of women that are basically slaves to him, that are under his dominion, under his control. He does whatever he wants to them. And he like openly brags about this. And I mean, what I'm saying is very tame compared to what he says. Like if you watch some of his videos, they're horrible. And the thing about Andrew Tate is, and all of the all of the influencers that are like him, is they are speaking to a generation of men who feel like they're lost and feel like they have no purpose in the world. And they're actually not hooking men in with misogyny. Right. So these men don't set out trying to be misogynistic. I should say boys. They're not even men. They're young boys, young, impressionable boys. And they're not even hooking them with misogyny. They're hooking them with gym workouts. They're hooking them with wealth building advice. They're hooking them with drive and focus and like motivational stuff. And then the misogyny is like this other thing that gets snuck in on the back end. But my point in saying all of this is that they've done studies on the manosphere. And I had it right here. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Give me one moment. I'll bring up the studies. I was just researching this morning. So groups called Equimundo and the Movember Institute did studies on the manosphere. And this is what they found. Up to 80% of teenage boys in Western countries have consumed manosphere content. So they've been exposed to it. They've consumed it. And this is teenage boys. So this isn't all men. These are young boys. It says only about 20 to 25% of young men actually agree with the views. So 75 to 80% of men are either indifferent, curious, skeptical, or actively disagree with the ideologies, right? Vast majority of men do not buy into these ideas. It's a very small percentage, and particularly young men, right? Like most older men look at this, they think it's garbage. But what happens is these views are so outrageous. They're so obviously wrong. They're so obviously disgusting that when you post them on social media, they get such visceral reactions, and you have a small percentage of people who are cheering them on. And then you have a larger percentage of people, both men and women, who go, this is fucking disgusting. And it creates these very visceral arguments in the comments, and these posts rack up millions and millions of views, thousands and hundreds of thousands of comments. They become viral. And what starts to happen is this content starts to show up in people's feed, and it seems like the movement is bigger than it is. Now, the reason that social media is such a problem here is because before social media, movements like this would have gotten no traction. They would have been three guys sitting in a basement talking shit. But now, because anybody can post the most outrageous, disgusting thing, and it goes viral, it makes these movements seem bigger. And in fact, even though they're not as mainstream as they seem, they do get a lot of attraction because they're being platformed by things like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And now, here's part of it that really sickens me. Because, toxic men are going to be toxic men. They've always been around. They'll probably always be around. They're a relatively small percentage of men overall. And if we just ignore them, they kind of don't exist. They kind of go away. But there's this whole movement, and I want to call these guys out. And I'm not going to call them by name because I don't know all their names, but I see their content. And there's this whole movement of these men who are presenting themselves as the white knights or the good guys, and they are resharing manosphere content to talk about how disgusting these men are and how and really how disgusting men are as a whole is what it ends up coming across as. And so these men are kind of throwing their whole gender under the bus, saying men are disgusting, men are awful, but I'm the good one you can trust. And what they're doing is they're confirming women's deepest fears about men while virtue signaling themselves as the good one. I'm the one you can trust. I'm the good one. All the other men are trash. And they're giving these manosphere creators more reach than they would have had otherwise. Like, they're exposing these manosphere creators to other people. They're making the movement bigger. And these men are not heroes. Like, personally, I find the whole thing quite narcissistic. They're propping themselves up to get the approval of thousands of women online. They're not helping. They're not making the situation better. They're not demonstrating what a good man is. They're just confirming women's deepest fears and hatred of men. And they're expanding the movement. And by extension, they're keeping more people on the platform, keeping more people arguing, keeping more people dysregulated. They're profiting off it a little bit. So they're creating this fear and this dysregulation for personal profit. But then they're sending the money right up to the top. And who's really profiting off of it? The platforms. And, maybe some of these men, I don't think all of them are good intention. I think some of them know exactly what they're doing. But maybe some of them think they're doing the right thing. But they're not. Because rather than demonstrating what a good man is, which through their virtue signaling, technically they claim to be that, but rather than demonstrating what that is, they're just throwing gas on the gender war fire. There's one other thing I want to talk about here, and this is the recent news that came out. 26 million men involved in a secret rape academy. Now, first of all, if it's 26 million, it's not a secret. Okay. But that was the headline. 26 million men involved in a secret rape academy. Now, let me say, first of all, this is just fucking disgusting. It's one of the most sickening things I've ever heard in my life. Like I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm married to a woman, an amazing woman. I would never do anything to hurt her, let alone drug and rape her. And there's this community of men that are doing this to their wives and their partners, and then not only doing it themselves, but teaching other men how to do it. So how to do it without getting caught, how to do it without creating an overdose, and then posting the videos online for other men to watch. This is just, it's absolutely disgusting. It's one of the most sickening things I think I've ever heard in my entire life. And the headline, 26 million men are involved in this. That's a blatant, outright lie. And I've seen a lot of the conversation around this because a lot of people were coming out and saying it wasn't 26 million men. In fact, the facts are the actual groups they found where these men were actively participating in it, in total was about 1,000 men, which is disgusting and awful and horrific, but that's a very different scale, 1,000 versus 26 million. And then these 1,000 men posted there were I think 20,000 videos online that fell into this category. And these videos cumulatively among all of them had racked up hundreds of thousands, maybe a few million views. And that doesn't mean that millions of men were watching these necessarily. It could mean they clicked onto the video for a second. There are a lot of ways that could happen, but there was a good amount of views that had racked up on these videos. And I'm not minimizing what happened. What happened was awful and disgusting and horrible. And I hope that some kind of justice is brought around this. Women deserve that. The women who are in relationships with these men deserve that. They deserve justice. They deserve this to be exposed. And I'm happy that the story is getting exposure. It needs to. We need to talk about these things. But here's my problem with the headline. They didn't say 1,000 men involved in a rape academy. They said 26 million men. Now, there are 175 million men in the United States. If you say 26 million men, that's 1 in every 7 men. So that means you walk down the street, you count 7 men, 1 of them is involved in a rape academy. And I heard that number, when I first started hearing about this, I read that number. My immediate instinct was there's no fucking way that's true. I know 7 men and I can promise you that none of them are involved in this. There's no fucking way that that's true. And so I went and did the research. And when I did the research, I found the truth. And a lot of these influencers either did not do the research or they didn't care to do it. But first CNN, which shame on them for posting this headline. And then all of the influencers on social media took this headline and ran with it. And then people are coming out because people were correcting. People were saying it wasn't 26 million men. And then people are coming out and shaming people for saying the truth. They're coming out and saying, how dare you correct me on this? One influencer I saw, oh, of course, because that's what we need to be talking about, how it wasn't 26 million men. Yes, we need to be talking about how it wasn't 26 million men, not to excuse what happened, but to say that it's not 1 in 7 men that are doing this. And that's important because if 1 in 7 men are doing it, nobody is safe. And this is another way that we are kept at constant war with each other. Constant fear, constant hypervigilance, constant dysregulation because we're being bombarded with information like this. And like, let's say, why did the headline say 26 million? Because that's going to get way more clicks than 1,000 would. And our news media, which they're the ones who initially released the story, they know this. They're experts. This is what they do for a living. Create the most sensational headline possible. Get people arguing about it. Get people talking about it. Some people are going to say that's not true, and then other people are going to hate them for saying that's not true. And here's why this matters. Is because there is nothing more regulating. There is nothing safer than a secure, healthy relationship. You see, my wife and I know that no matter what happens in our lives, no matter what happens in the world, no matter what we see on the news, no matter what, we are going to come home to someone who has our back. Someone who will hold us when we're afraid. Someone who will love us no matter how much we fail, no matter how imperfect we are. And that gives us a sense of stability that makes us able to handle the insanity of the world. And there are massive forces at work that are trying to destroy that for profit, for power. And I'm going to say this. I say this with love, but I'm going to say it strongly. If you fall for that, shame on you. Be smarter. Because the vast majority of men are not horrible people. The vast majority of women are not horrible people. It's like saying all the immigrants are horrible people. The vast majority of any group of human beings are not horrible people. They are people. They have some good. They have some bad. They have fears and anxieties and stresses. Sometimes they make wrong choices. Sometimes they make right choices. Welcome to being human. It's like when, in the Bible, when the Pharisees were stoning the prostitute, and Jesus stopped them. And he said, let whoever is without sin cast the first stone. And they all turned and walked away. Because there's not a single one of us who is without sin. And this isn't a religious conversation. I'm not a religious person. I'm just stating the fucking obvious. Who here is so perfect that they can call half of the human population evil? You know, a lot of women, and I don't necessarily think this is my listenership. If you're listening to this, then this is probably not you. But I see this a lot. And, you know, I'm on social media, and I'm actually one of the people who refuses to rage bait on social media. And so I speak the truth, but some people don't like the truth. And I'll often get women who lump me into some kind of manosphere category because I don't pander the way some of these other male influencers do. And they'll lump me into that category and they'll say, oh, you hate women, or, oh, you're a misogynist, or, oh, because they can't distinguish between what I'm saying and what some of these other toxic men are saying. Because anybody who doesn't pander automatically gets lumped into that same group. And some of these women, it's so obvious to me that just because I'm a man, I've already lost. There's nothing I could say to them. Because I'm a man, they're already viewing me through that filter, and they've already made up their mind. And I wonder sometimes, do you have a father? Do you have a brother? Do you have you ever had a male friend? Do you have any friends or family members that are married to a good man? And maybe not, and maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe they've never actually witnessed a good man in real life. That's possible. But can you go walking down the street and look around at every human being who's passing you on the street and say that half of them are horrible human beings just because they have a penis? That doesn't compute to me. That doesn't make sense. I can't understand how anybody could be that ignorant. And this is a problem because when we hate each other, we're not looking at the real issue. Here's the real issue. There are 1,000 men who were literally involved in a rape academy helping other men learn how to sexually abuse their wives. That is fucking the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life. That's a real problem. It's a very real problem that needs to be addressed. And when we say that 26 million men were in on it, it actually takes the focus away from the real predators, from the real perpetrators here. We shouldn't be talking about how 1 in 7 men in the United States are doing this. We should be saying there are 1,000 men that are literally involved in this. We have data, we have records, we have emails, we have online profiles. We need to have the FBI investigating those 1,000 men. And when we make it about something else, those 1,000 men get away free. We have the Epstein files, which exposes a network of wealthy and powerful individuals. And I'm sure most of you are aware of this by now. Like the amount of information in those files is staggering. Like there is documented, detailed information on some of the most influential men in the world, detailing like the scale of these atrocious crimes that were committed. And it's all sitting right there in the Department of Justice. And the government is actively covering it up. Like they're actively withholding this information from the public. They're protecting these men. And when everyone is outraged about these 26 million men, the reality of like there are literal billionaires who are pulling the strings of the world right now. And there is documented evidence of their crimes sitting in the DOJ, and they're walking away scot-free while the world argues about a made-up number. And again, like, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Because I would say 99 in every 100 men you meet, it doesn't mean he's perfect. It doesn't mean he's flawless. But at the core, he's a good guy. He's just trying to make his way in the world. He just wants to be loved. He just wants to matter. He just wants his life to mean something. And you know what? Maybe he doesn't know how to talk about his emotions. Maybe nobody ever taught him that. Maybe he's lonely and he watches porn because it makes him feel better. Maybe he gets angry and he has anger issues and like realistically, maybe he's not the kind of person you want to be in a relationship with. That's fair. That's fair. But he's not a monster. He's just a human. Again, who here is without sin? Let them cast the first stone. And this doesn't mean that, every man or every woman is marriage material. It doesn't mean that you're required to fall in love with them or marry, but it just means like, take a step back and give people some grace. Life is hard for everyone. And you know what? Life is not so simple that you can just choose a group of people and make them your enemy, and that's going to solve all your problems. Life is not that simple. And if you are making it that simple, you are a part of the problem. If you're making it that simple, you are part of the problem. There are 4 core strategies that the ego uses. And all of this atrocity, from war to murder to rape to all atrocity, is essentially manifestations of unregulated ego. And there are 4 primary mechanisms that the ego uses to survive. One is getting validation and approval. One is being in control. One is being comfortable. And one is being right. If you take these 4 things away from the ego, it ceases to exist. And if we look at this idea of having an enemy who is the reason for our problems, Does that get me validation and approval? Well, yeah. First of all, it validates all my mistakes. Right? Oh, well, if men are the problem or if women are the problem, then I've never done anything wrong. It's them. Validates all of my mistakes. Do I get approval? Yeah. I partner up with a bunch of other people who want to let themselves off the hook too. Oh yeah, it's all men, it's all women. They suck. They're all fucking manipulative. They're all aggressive. They're all rapists and monsters. And then I get approval from my tribe by aligning against the other. Do I get to be in control? Yeah, I do. Because for me to say, you know what, it's not that simple. Everybody's an individual. Everybody has their own story. Life is crazy. Life is hard. People are imperfect. I'm imperfect. We're all imperfect. Some more than others. Some people you got to watch out for. Some people you don't. That makes me very vulnerable. But if I say, oh, it's all men or it's all women, now I'm in control. I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to be connected to my own vulnerability. Does it keep me comfortable? Absolutely. You know what? Validation and approval are comfortable. Being in control is comfortable. Being in blissful ignorance, thinking that the problems of the world are that simple, that's comfortable. So fuck yeah, it makes me comfortable. Am I right? Oh, well, that's a big one right there. Fuck yeah, I'm right. I'm right and you're wrong. And now I'm superior to you. I'm the holy one. You're the sinful one. I'm the good one. You're the bad one. I'm right and you're wrong. And narratives like this are a fortress of ego. And what the ego does is it isolates. You see, we heal when we connect. You know, it's like I would challenge everybody, and I know they're not going to do this, but anybody who thinks immigrants are the problem, I would challenge you to go walk up to Home Depot. You might be you might need a translator because you're not going to speak their language probably. But go over to Home Depot, find a group of guys sitting out by a truck trying to get some work, and sit down and ask to hear their story. Find out what that human being went through to even be sitting out front of Home Depot looking for work right now. What did they have to go through to get there? And actually let yourself connect with that human being and their journey. And if you can walk away from that conversation still thinking that immigrants are the monster, let me tell you, you're the fucking monster. I know what some of these people have been through. I worked alongside them, like stuffed into the back of a truck, held at gunpoint, sometimes for months. Like they're some of these people to get into the country, they have to like work with a cartel, and they're basically treated like a slave, held at gunpoint, stuffed into trucks. And they do all of this to escape a hostile environment that they lived in and hope for a better life. And here we are with our privilege in the United States looking down on them. Like, fuck you, honestly. That's how I feel about it. You who have never had a real problem in your life, looking down on that person. I'm angry today. I told you. I know it's not easy. And I'm going to speak to the women for a moment because I know men are not easy. And let me say that women are inherently, and this is a broad generalization because there are some men that are way wiser than some women. But as a broad generalization, women tend to have a little more wisdom than men do. Men tend to be very narrow focused, and this is part of the masculine frame. Like the male is the hunter, right? If we take it back to hunter and gatherers, the male is the hunter, the woman, the female is the gatherer. Right? So the man's job is to hunt. He identifies an objective and he hunts it. When the masculine identifies an objective, his entire world reduces to that one objective. Nothing else exists. There's a level of disconnection in that because he's not connected to how that objective interacts with everything else in the world. The only thing he cares about is that objective. If you look at our relationship with the environment, it's a great example, right? What do we need? We need to harvest resources. So we set the objective, we go after it. The world is falling apart, but hey, we're getting the resources. The planet might not be livable for future generations, but we're getting the resources, right? So that's the feminine, the gatherer. She gathers things together. She has a wider perspective of what's happening. She sees how everything is interconnected. That's why I say the feminine tends to have a little more wisdom than the masculine. And I understand how women looking at men can be frustrated sometimes. I get that. Because you see the bigger picture and you're going, why the fuck don't they get it? And that's got to be incredibly frustrating. You know, it happens with me and my wife. I have an objective. She's looking at the bigger picture. We get into an argument about it. Usually I go, yeah, you're right. I didn't see all of that. It takes me a little while to get there sometimes. Like, that's fucking annoying and frustrating and maddening. I get it. But that doesn't make men bad people. And it can be tough for men and women to be in relationship with each other. And yet when we figure it out, it's the most magical thing in the world. My daughter wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the relationship between me and my wife. My daughter is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Never seen anything that even comes close. And she only exists because of the love between a man and a woman. She only has a safe home to grow up in because we protect and nurture that love. And I get the disconnect. I get the frustration. And what I want to say is hatred is easy. Hatred doesn't require anything. It just requires hate. That's all. It doesn't make you a better person. You're not morally superior because you hate someone. You're not better than them because you hate them. You're just a Pharisee throwing a stone at a prostitute. It's easy to attack a prostitute. It doesn't require anything of you. But to understand her, to really connect with how she even became a prostitute in the first place, what her life must be like such that that's what she feels she has to do to survive, that requires something. And I think we could all offer each other that grace. You know, if men and women both were to take the time to really try to understand each other, I think we would be amazed. And I say this as somebody who has spent my life trying to understand women. As a coach to women, as a husband to a woman, as a father to a little girl, like my whole life is about trying to understand women. By the way, I don't quite think I'm there yet. Working on it. But let me tell you, I'm amazed. I think women are the most amazing beings. They're just wonderful. And anybody who takes the time to try to understand the other with an open heart could only come to that same conclusion. And there's one more thing I want to say here. And I started with this, that I said I want it to be practical. And I want to offer something practical. And I'm going to offer it to my audience, which 90% of the listeners here are women. That's why when I frame these conversations, the reason I often speak to women is not because men don't matter or because I don't think it's important to talk to men, but it's because I know most of the people listening are women. And this is what I want to say. It's easy to look down on men because they are often not as emotionally evolved. They don't have the therapy speak necessarily. They might not have done as much work on themselves. They might not be emotionally available. They might tend to be a little more aggressive. They might tend to be a little more angry. They might have more obvious flaws. They might not be as readily connected to their empathy or their compassion. These aren't qualities that men naturally develop. And by the way, not because there's anything fundamentally incapable about them, but just because our society doesn't reward men for developing those qualities. And so, like, a lot of the things that women hate men for are actually things that, like, those men are that way because they're victims of the same society that women are. Like, we were all raised by the patriarchy, whether you're a man or a woman, and women internalize that one way, men internalize that another way, but we're all victims of the same dysfunctional system. There is no man alive today who is at fault for that system. That system existed eons before he was born. He's a product of it. And on the surface, it's easy to look down on them. You know, let me talk about that 26 million number for a minute. Because where that number came from was not the people who were involved in this scandal or even watching the videos. It was the number of men, or let me say the number of views. So some of these men might have gone there every day. So that racks up a lot of views, right? So like it was the number of views in February 2026 on a particular porn site. So there were 26 million views, which is significantly less men. Maybe a third of that was the number of actual men. But 26 million views to this porn site in February 2026. And that's one of the critiques too. It's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter that they weren't all involved in the scandal. 26 million men are still watching porn. And I got a message about this. You may be listening. If you are, hello to you and thank you for the message. But she wanted me to speak about men and porn. And she said she finds it really disheartening that so many men watch porn, even legal porn, or even, you know, porn that's not fucked up. But she just finds it disheartening that porn is so normalized. And I get that. And That's a big flaw for a lot of men, I think. It is. And I don't think porn is inherently bad. And I've spoken about this before. Like, there's a lot of ethical porn out there. And I think that there's a lot of women created porn. And I really appreciate that women are taking back the industry, because it's an industry that women have been abused by. And I really appreciate that women are taking back the industry and doing it on their terms and even profiting from it, which I think is wonderful. If it's something that they have been, brutalized by, and now they're taking it back and turning it into something that they can personally profit from. I think it's a good thing. And there are other elements to that conversation, like, well, is it good for the society as a whole? How does it shape our views of sex? How does it impact relationships? There's a lot to talk about there. And maybe one day I'll do a whole conversation on that, because it's not all good. It's also not all bad. It's a very nuanced conversation. But my point here is that, it's easy to attack men for watching porn. It's easy to attack men for not being emotionally available. It's easy to attack them for their lack of awareness about certain things. It's easy to judge, and it's easy to hate. What's a lot harder is to connect to the experience of that human being. Why does he watch porn? Well, maybe he's lonely. Maybe he's isolated. Maybe he doesn't have a lot of close friends. Maybe he doesn't get any attention from women. And maybe for 1 hour at the end of his day, he can get on the computer with an OnlyFans model and she'll make him feel like a man. And that's the one time in his whole life that he doesn't feel insignificant, that he doesn't feel invisible. Is that wrong? I mean, like, I'll be the first to say there are probably better outlets, but is it wrong for him to just want to matter for a minute? And you see, to me, that doesn't sound like a problem with men. It sounds like a systemic problem in our culture that he doesn't have better outlets for that. And like, somewhere the hate has to give way to compassion. Somewhere we have to see the vulnerable human underneath the judgment. And that's not to say that there aren't predators, there aren't dangerous people. And this is why, like, if you listen to the podcast, if you follow my work, especially the teachings I have for women, like, so much of it is about how to interact with men in a powerful way to protect yourself, because some men are not safe. As a woman, that is a reality of this world, is that some men are not safe, and you need to know how to carry yourself so that you filter the safe ones from the unsafe ones. And in my work, I have a mentorship that I work with women, and in my program and in my content and my podcast, everything I do, I am constantly teaching women the principles that keep them safe and empower them in their relationships with men. And that's necessary. And that actually makes men better. When women have a standard that men have to rise to, men get better. And that brings me to what I wanted to say here, because I see these comments a lot. And I'm not saying this to boost myself up. It's just what I see. But a lot of times women will say, like, if only there were more men like you out there, or if only I could meet a man like you. I see this in my comments, and I'll get DMs and things like that. And this is what I want to say. A lot of the women who send me those types of comments or DMs, they wouldn't have given me a second look when I was single, because I was not this person. This is who I became in relationship with my wife. And that, I think, is a big problem in the way that women view men sometimes, is you want the finished product and you're looking for a completed, fully healed, fully integrated man, not realizing that that's who he becomes in relationship with a woman. And I want to be clear, it's not my wife who made me that. I did the work myself. And if I hadn't, she would have left me. My wife wasn't settling. She was clear about who I needed to be in relationship with her. But our relationship gave me a place to rise. It gave me a place to matter. It gave me a reason to become more. And not just a reason, but actually an environment where I could practice that. I think I was always somebody who wanted to be more. She became the environment where I got to work on it every single day of my life. And a lot of the men who are dying for that opportunity are the men that never even get a chance. I'm not blaming anyone for anything here because it's not women's fault. It's not men's fault. It is a complex fucking shit show is what it is. And relationships between men and women have always been tenuous. They've always been difficult. I don't think there's ever been a time in history when that wasn't true. And now we have influencers, algorithms, and billionaires who are throwing gas on the fire, making it harder than it's ever been before. And for those of you who are out there dating right now, for those of you who are seeking partnership, I have a lot of compassion for where you are, because it's not an easy place to be. It's not an easy position to be in. And if you buy into the noise and you buy into the outrage, it goes from being difficult to being impossible. But underneath the noise and the outrage that you see on social media and that everybody's caught up in, there are individual people, individual men and individual women who meet through a random occurrence. Maybe they meet on a dating app, or they're introduced through friends, or they're bump into each other in a coffee shop or whatever, but they meet and they're able to put aside their differences and they're able to accept each other for the imperfectly flawed humans that they are. And they're able to choose to love each other regardless. The woman in my Inspired Love program got married last week. I was watching her dance on Facebook with her husband, their first dance. I knew her before she met him. Now they're married. This is happening all the time. But if you listen to the noise and the outrage, you won't realize it's happening all the time. And at the end of the day, when we can choose to accept someone who's imperfect, who's flawed, who's still got work to do, but we can see that they're willing to do the work and that they want to be in a relationship and that they care, and we give them a chance. And we work together and we work hard. And it's not always easy. Sometimes it requires therapy. Sometimes it requires conversations that you never thought you would have. But when two people can set aside their differences and they can do this, you create a safe space that nothing else in the world can touch. Like I said earlier, my wife and I, no matter what happens in our lives, we know that we can come home and we have a safe place where we're going to be loved, where we're going to be accepted, where we're going to be held. And that creates a sense of internal safety that gives us the resilience to face the world. I think that's something worth having. I don't think that's something to minimize or dismiss. In fact, I think we all want that. And we choose to hate because if we can hate the other side, it excuses us not having it. It prevents us from having to deal with the difficult questions about why we still haven't found it. So I'm going to close with this. And today was just kind of unfiltered, just me speaking my truth. And I don't know, maybe I'll lose half my audience with this one. I don't know. Those who have ears to hear can hear. The rest of you, goodbye with love. If you don't have ears to hear it, I guess you don't need to be a part of the audience. But the name of this show is The Conscious Love Show. And the purpose of this show is to create more love, to help us create and experience more conscious love in our lives. And what I'm talking about today, this is it. This is where it really matters. Like we could talk about boundaries and standards and community. Like we could talk about all the stuff. This is where it really matters. If you can't do what I'm encouraging you to do in today's episode, you can have all your boundaries and all your standards. And you can have everything, all you want. You'll be alone forever. Even if you get into a relationship, you'll still be alone. You'll be alone in your own heart. You know, it's kind of a novel idea that the way to experience more love is to be loving. Stop finding reasons to hate people. Start finding reasons to love them. Stop judging. Start accepting. Again, that doesn't mean that everybody deserves a relationship with you. It's okay to say, I don't think you deserve that relationship with me and I'm not going to allow it. That's okay. That's healthy. But you could do that without judging or hating that person, or turning it into a statement about how all men are or how all women are. And that's what the invitation is today. So if you tuned in for this one, thank you. And I wish you lots of love, lots of blessings. I hope all your dreams come true. And if you know that you're carrying some hate, I want you to know that that's normal. It's understandable. It's really easy to do in this world. But try to soften that. Try to find the part inside of yourself that wants to love more than it wants to hate. And let that part of you lead. All right, love and blessings, everybody. Thank you for being with me today. I'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you'd leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.